Well, hey, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. This is going to be my review of Gundam Requiem for Vengeance, which is dropped on Netflix. There's a lot of talk about it. I'm going to give my takes. If you haven't, check out the roundtable discussion I did with some supporters of the community. But also, there's a lot of bad takes that have been out there, but also the ending. I think there's a lot of back and forth about the ending of, is it a good ending or bad ending? And I think I've got a good take on it, but yeah, let's dive in. So with Gundam Requiem for Vengeance, we're getting a story during the 1 Year War, 0079. This is during the original Gundam show. We get a lot of stories around there, but I still like it. And I think after decades, it's nice to get like a refreshing of that time, especially in terms of what we're capable of with visuals. This is an Unreal Engine 5 produced show. So it does have a lot of the really good graphics, I guess, in terms of the mobile suits and mobile suit battles, but it also has some of the look to the characters that you might find from a video game. But, as we see here is an example of what this does well using Unreal Engine 5. It's very cinematic. It has shots that help establish locations where characters are in, especially because when it comes to like the mobile suits and how big they are, it's kind of nice to have an understanding of where things are. And it starts off awesome because right away there's, Zeon soldiers on Earth getting attacked by the Federation. Of course, Federation wanted to defend themselves, and then you see some Zaku's drop down from some gauze in the sky, which is awesome to see. That's something we saw in 08th MS Team, for instance, and other Gundam media, but it's really cool to get these action-packed visuals right away, especially using the Unreal Engine 5. And as we go, we meet this team, the Red Wolf Squadron of Zaku 2s led by Area Solari. And I'll say something that really works for me well is the portrayal of the main characters, not only in terms of the voice acting, but also like their motivations, where it's intertwined with how the action plays out. And in fact, it actually makes the action scenes really fun. What we're having here is a slaughter at the beginning of her team, and she's going around finding stragglers. So the beginning of the series really seems like it's one day after another of, okay, we just got attacked by the Federation. They have this crazy mobile suit, which they do an excellent job of because, it's not always that we get Gundam from the Zeon perspective. It has happened before, but it's nice to kind of get it again with, fresh visuals, but also with the concept of making the Gundam seem like the bad guy, or it's almost like a slasher film. When they were first showing promotional shots and then you see the Gundam head with the gash in its eye, I'm thinking, oh, that looks like Jason. And the way they're even portraying him seems like that this is some sort of like slasher killer. And that's kind of how it works. Throughout the rest of the series, they're pretty much being chased by this Gundam EX, just taking out her squad. And the title being Requiem for Vengeance, I think that really speaks to what is going on for most of this show in terms of the story is doing a good job of making you feel sympathy for the Zeons and for her squadron, or her in general, Solari. We see that she has a family, that her husband had died, and they were having to, died in war. She was having to go into, leave her son behind. There's even a dream sequence where she's looking at her son and then he kind of like falls into a pit, and then you're seeing the Gundam EX, which is kind of foreshadowing something. But, through that, even though all this stuff is happening to her and her squadron, she's actually pretty level-headed and really cares about trying to keep everyone alive, trying to get home. And so that builds the sympathy for the character. And we do meet some other characters along the way, and I think they really only spent times on the ones that were super important to kind of portray what they're doing here, where they're trying to make you, again, feel sympathy for the Zeon side, even though if you're not too familiar, the Zeons, they gassed a colony, the Zabis assassinated Zeondu Daikun, who was the leader originally, and so then they dropped the colony on Earth. So it's like they are kind of the bad guys in that sense, but we're looking, down on the ground floor, seeing soldiers that are just caught up in this, and some of them, it's not like they necessarily agree with it, but others, it's more of we're seeing them as humans, or they're being humanized, and so we feel sympathy for them, which I think is great as it leads to the ending. And what's interesting about the ending is she goes up against the Gundam EX, now that we as the audience and her know that it's piloted by a kid. So she's associating, which is normal for Gundam, a child piloting a mobile suit, but she's seeing this as her own son and feeling like, no, let's not fight. Let's just try to get out of here, try to get away. At the last minute, as she is distracting him, really to talk him down, a Guff Custom comes from behind with the heat sword, stabs right through him, potentially killing him. And I think this is an interesting moment for the character, because this whole time she wanted to go home and be back with her son, but after witnessing this, she decides to go all in to Sieg Zeon. And I think what is an awesome ending, in my opinion, is kind of subverting the sympathy we were feeling for the Zeon soldiers, where at the end it's like, well, they are still Zeon soldiers. Maybe it's in their blood to really have this vengeance after a requiem of vengeance. And so after that, she decides to stay behind. She decides she's going to join the African Corps and sort of the Zeon remnants, pretty much, which we see, through Zeta, through Double Zeta, even up through Unicorn. So there's a lot of potential and possibility there for there to be sequels, which I actually hope so, because I really liked what I saw. Other interesting story elements are the character Yuri Kelleran showing up. He was a Zeon officer in 08th MS team that we saw when they were in the Southeast Asia region, kind of, a little bit after it, because these kind of take place around the same time. That was kind of a cool little Easter egg, because it's nice to be able to have some more sort of callbacks to earlier Gundam, but without being too in your face. So I think this was the classiest way to do it. Now, as for the new type phenomenon, I think this show didn't necessarily need it in terms of the story, but I think it just, again, added another element to Gundam. There's times throughout this, the different episodes where it's just like she's sensing something about to happen and she knows to move out of the way, or there's times where she's face to face with the Gundam EX, and even the Gundam EX is kind of like chilling out. Obviously, there's something going on there, and that has to do with the new type abilities. Obviously, the child that is piloting the Gundam EX is also a new type, and what is mentioned in the original Mobile Suit Gundam mid-season, and also in Gundam Mobile Suit Gundam 2 from the movie trilogy, is even then the Federation is doubling down on doing physicals for as many people as possible, finding out who could potentially be a new type because they want to utilize them during this war. I even think it was June of 0079 that Zeon had already set up, I think, the Augusta lab to do new type testing there. So we're at a time where the new type powers are being shown through war, and I think it makes sense, almost like sifting. And it's these new types eventually do meet each other. There's a reason she's the Wolf Mother of the Red Wolf Squadron, and there's a reason why the child is piloting the Gundam EX. They're in these high positions because they are new types and sort of met that way. And, some of the times where they're kind of looking at each other and maybe the Gundam EX isn't doing anything or she's not doing anything is because they're sensing each other. The child Gundam pilot is sensing a mom wanting to get back to her child. And the Iria Solari is sensing a child is piloting the Gundam. So it's very interesting layer that they added on top of the story to kind of give more character development, which is sometimes hard to do in something that's just straight up war and fighting. So as for story, love it. I think when it comes to most Gundam series, this is more of the less convoluted, more straightforward, but also there's subversion in there. There's a lot of symbolism that is not directly spoken to you that you almost have to pick up by watching it, like something that was brought up in a roundtable discussion about the pocket watch being passed on. And that's kind of the moment to where Iria Solari herself changed what her end goal was. All right, as for animation, it's amazing. It's amazing to see Unreal Engine 5 portraying mobile suits in the detail that they are. doing the battles that they are, especially because it seemed like the director or cinematographer or whoever was planning this out really planned for the shots to be very cinematic most of the time, especially when we're having troops talking by looking at mobile suits. The camera is set a little lower. The sound of mobile suits is always very loud. The camera shakes when there's steps. They really do a good job of portraying that these are these larger than life military weapons that are being used. And when there's actual mobile suit combat, it does a lot of long but not shaky takes showing mobile suits doing moves, like when the Gundam EX was fighting the Guff Custom and it like went behind it and stabbed it with the beam saber. Very cool to be able to pull that off without it looking like a game. And I think it was deliberate throughout, because there, again, those establishing shots I'm talking about are unneeded in terms of telling a story written on the page. But when it comes to showcasing or visualizing what the viewer is going to be invested in, we get a really good shot of everything that's going on. It kind of shows off the beautiful visuals of being in the Romania countryside, I guess, that time of year. And then the one complaint I will make, and I think it's a complaint that most people have anyway, and I think it's just an uncanny valley thing. It's not like it's almost an arbitrary complaint, but you know, if you're not used to it, it's going to bother you. And that's some of the character talking and the character animations. Whenever they're not using mocap, or whenever it's a side character, it looks like there's kind of, you know, probably less budget used on them, and it kind of throws you off. Just like, okay, that looks odd, because, you know, as humans, we tend to see things like pareidolia, you've probably heard of, where you look at something that looks like it's a face. It's because our brains are wired to see things that are human-like, and when they're not, we're kind of put off. Kind of weird. Is that like an evolutionary thing, if we are being tricked by an alien pretending to be a human? That's not for this review. But anyway, there's some like this character here where they are exaggerated, so it's actually easier to take that in, because when you're not trying to make something look realistic and you're making it exaggerated, just like anime does in general, you know, the bigger eyes, the way that they're kind of shaped, things are exaggerated. It's easier because you know you're seeing a characterization. And here, whenever it's like a super realistic looking character, if they didn't put a lot of time into it, it would look odd. But for the main character, I think they did great. So anyway, I think this is a must watch. If you're a Gundam fan, it's a must watch. I think if you're not into Gundam, I think it's a great watch, because it's a really cool story. A really cool story about this mother who is wanting to get back home to her child and get away from this war. But due to what she experiences in the war, she changes her tune. She decides she wants to stay and fight, but it also helps inform kind of the story of being on the side of Zeon, because she's there to help invade Earth. They are the bad guys. So at the end of the day, what might be kind of a subverting ending it's really better than the tropey ending of, oh, I just got back home with my kid. So I think it's excellent the way it ended. My favorite parts being the awesome mobile suit battles, the CGI, the way they make it look. Also the symbolism throughout the story, whether it has to do with being a new type, the pocket watch, the Requiem for Vengeance throughout until we get that major character change near the end. It's just very well done. For future Gundam that use the Unreal Engine for something like this, they should continue to do that. I would suggest maybe when it comes to the character designs, make them look like anime characters. Make them and not have to worry about the details of like pores and sweat. Like, you can only be so realistic until it gets to the point where it looks scary and odd and maybe that's just a thing that has to do with the generation. It probably depends on if you grew up seeing one thing or another. I didn't grow up watching anime. It was really off-putting for the longest time to get into anime because of the character designs, but I've gotten over that. And I got over that to the point where I was able to get over to watch the original 0079 with that old-ass animation. But you know what? I grew up watching old-ass animation, so it was easy to get into. I do think, though, that for future Unreal Engine 5 CGI, they should, again, kind of go the anime route. This is just a really good story with really badass mobile suit battles. Anyway, just wanted to end with that. I thought this was excellent. Hope you guys all enjoyed it. But until next time, be cool.